Yes, welcome to my presentation about Invictus. So, the movie Invictus is from 2009 and is directed by Clint Eastwood and based on a true story about how Nelson Mandela went together with the captain of the South African rugby team to unite the country after decades of apartheid. The movie is from Nelson Mandela's release the 11th February 1990 to the 24th of July 1995, where the South African rugby team, the Springboks, won gold at this World Cup. The movie portrays Nelson Mandela throughout the first years of being the president and shows how he uses rugby as a sport to unite the whole country. Furthermore, the movie illustrates the divided nation South Africa and all its problems. And first, I want to tell you a little bit about Nelson Mandela, who is a kind of guy who pours tea to his guests, and he began to give 1/3 of his salary to the charity after he found out how much he made, and he thought that it was way too much and that it was wrong. Nelson Mandela is a very calm and quiet man who lives with patience and the ability to forgive. He is not talking to his children or his ex-wife, which is very difficult for him. And after he was released, he wanted to unite the country, and he saw the opportunity to unite the country through the sport rugby. Therefore, he started having an interest in rugby, and he wanted to know all the rules and all the players. And next up, we got Francis Pienaar, who is the captain of the rugby team. And he, together with Nelson Mandela, developed a lot of ideas to inspire the rugby team. Francis is also a person who believes in his teammates and believes in himself, and he's not giving up. And especially after Nelson Mandela invites him over to tea and says that he wants the rugby team to win the World Cup, it gives Francis a lot of motivation, and therefore the rugby team, it trains harder than ever, and for the first time they have the whole population supporting them, and but Pienaar still thinks the night before the finals, he thinks how Nelson Mandela has spent 30 years in a tiny cell and come out ready to forgive all the white people who put him in there. And then I also have a third person, which is the population as an undefined whole. And at the beginning of the movie, it's very clear that we have the black people and we have the white people. But throughout the movie, this barrier, it breaks down. And an example of this is when Nelson Mandela hires white guards as he walks into his new office. And the black guards, they can't understand why he's doing this because of what the white have done to Nelson Mandela. But Nelson Mandela just quietly and calmly answers this. The rainbow nation starts here. Reconciliation starts here. Forgiveness starts here too. And this shows a lot about how Nelson Mandela is and how he united the country. And the film Invictus takes place in South Africa in 1995, 1 year after Nelson Mandela became the president of the United States. And his number one priority is to unite a very divided South Africa. And the environment and atmosphere is a very tense and toxic between the black South Africans and between the white South Africans. And the population has gone through a segregation, and where the black people and the white people, they disliked each other, and now they have to live side by side after many years of fighting. And also Nelson Mandela is the first colored president in in country's history. And in the film, we also see that the black and white South Africans, they have nothing in common and do not have the same national feeling that normally brings a country together. But because the colored people, they primarily live in slums and had low paid jobs, and the white people, sorry, they lived a lot better and had higher paid jobs, and that's also a reason for the population, that why is it so divided. And the movie is told from Nelson Mandela's point of view, because we follow his private thoughts, and we follow a lot of scenes regarding him and his family. And an example of this is when Nelson Mandela is out on his daily walk, and then one of his security guards says, "How's it going with your family?" And then Nelson Mandela instantly decides to drop his walk and says, "I have a very large family, 42 million. I don't think I'll walk today." And this is obviously difficult for Nelson Mandela to speak about, because he avoids contact with his children and his ex-wife, and instead he sees like the whole country as his family. And the movie is seen from a third-person omniscient narrator, and is, as I told you earlier, based on a true story, which makes it appear like a documentary. And the first scene of Invictus summarize and clarifies this how the races and how South Africa was divided during apartheid, during the apartheid regime, very clear. And the contrasts are the keywords for this scene. They are like when we see a white man in clean uniform on officially watered grass playing rugby, and like on the other side of the wall we see colored people playing rugby or football with dirt on their shirts, and like not a former ball, and not real grass. And this scenes lead up to end credits and show how much like the World Cup meant to the South African people, and how winning the final brought all the South Africans together, because now they have something in common, they have something to celebrate over. And this is also like a solution to the problem of the country, of the very divided country. And the film, it follows the Hollywood model. For an example, the climax of the film is when the Springboks, they win the finals and win the World Cup, and the no point of return is when Nelson Mandela insists that the Springboks should not charge anything, and the population should change anything. And the population should support them. And the title Invictus fits very well with the movie, because the rugby team was undefeatable, and undefeated in the tournament because of the community of the South Africans. Nelson Mandela had a country stand together, which made the rugby team believe in themselves and believe that they could win the tournament, and they did. And the main theme is solidarity, because the whole plot of winning the World Cup is to bring the South African people together, and to like share this love for South Africa. But another theme could also be forgiveness, because this is something Nelson Mandela cared a lot about, and he don't think that we can move on as a person and develops if we can't forgive people. And the message of the movie is that with solidarity, a country can stand together and do the impossible. Nobody believed in this South American rugby team, but because of the solidarity and the country, they won the World Cup. And this is clear because we can see that the black and the white guards, they like become better and better friends after every match the South African team wins. And when Nelson Mandela sees this, he also says to his secretary, "Still think I'm wasting my time with rugby." And this is like, he says this as a symbol because he thinks that now she also can see how the nation across skin colors and prejudice can be like brought together over a sport, rugby. And then I have a comparative analysis of the poem and the movie, and like if we compare the poem to the film, we can see many similarities. For example, Nelson Mandela, he uses this power of rugby to like convince and to, what can I say, to overcome dark times by making people like stand together and celebrate the Springboks so that the country can celebrate as a united country. Yeah. And the poem, its focus is mainly on the human spirit and like its abilities to overcome adversity. And yeah, the poem's message is universal, and its appeal, it says quite empathetically that it doesn't matter who you are, believe or not, you can overcome dark times by being brave and never losing faith in your own soul's strength. Yes, that was my presentation.